An award-winning textile and fashion designer, a painter, a trained classical dancer, a theatre artist, and once a dentist. Our guest today wears multiple hats, none of which are visible today, of course. His life and experiences have made him a strong advocate for prevention of child sexual abuse in India and also an inspiration to many in the LGBTQ community, including us. His studio was recently nominated for top 5,000 MSMEs in India. And the man behind the story himself, Dr. Ganesh Nallari, is here to talk about his journey of awareness, self-love, and acceptance. Please join me in welcoming him.
Hello. So the question always is, where do I begin? But then when I say or think of a beginning, I think even the thought of starting or beginning something is already a job half done. So I always believe that what is most important is to have the thought, an idea, and how you begin will follow. So here I am to begin and share many chapters of my life. I started my career as a dentist, and I practiced for a couple of years before I switched on to what I was more passionate about, design. After completing, even before I studied dentistry, as a child, I've always been interested in art, painting, and dance. I learned Kuchipudi for almost 11 years. And then I switched to Bharatanatyam. I learned it for the longest I could. So I think what happened in terms of why the switch of career. After finishing dentistry, my BDS, I was not trying, but I was preparing for my MDS, my master's. And in that process, I was also working as a dental lecturer in the same college where I graduated from when they offered me a job. And I actually took up the job because I had a crush on one of my professors. I thought, oh, I can see him every day. That's a secret. I hope he's watching it now. But then there was so much to learn from him. When I say crush, it's not purely a physical intimacy, but everything about that person. I just wanted to be like my sir. So I think that's the reason why I actually took up that job. But then after a couple of months, when I was actually with that professor of mine, driving down the NIFT campus in Bangalore, I just asked him to stop the car and went to the campus, picked up the prospectus, and then he looked at me and said, "Now what?" I said, "Why not?" And then rest is history. NIFT has been a cakewalk because I never really considered design as something which I was studying, but it was something which was so organic. It was there within you, but it's more about how you polish your skill. So, in fact, until everybody questioned me about such a drastic shift of career from dentistry to design, it didn't even strike me because it came so naturally to me. The only time I had to actually tell my parents was before I joined NIFT, when I told my dad that 2 years of my life, let me do whatever I want to. I'm not going to blame my parents or, I'm not going to blame them that they were the ones who asked me to study dentistry. But I think I come from a generation, I'm talking about the early 90s, when everybody was studying engineering or medicine. So it was more of a social pressure. Though I wanted to do fine arts, I really wanted to be a painter. But I think it was understood that you have to do either medicine or engineering. And then, and I wasn't a bad student. I said, okay, let me just, if I have to paint, I will still continue painting. And that's what I did. Even when I studied dentistry, in the evenings I used to paint. Of course, dance took a break. Dance needs so much more commitment and time. But even as a dentist, you need to have a very good hand skill. You carve teeth in wax, you know. So I scored very well in all those subjects where there was a lot of practical work involved. So it was never about not being in touch with your other side. So NIFT happened, and I think more than anything, it was about, you know, you never try to prove to others. It's more about proving to your own self. Of course, there are 100 people watching you about, oh, this guy is around NIFT maybe just to hit around women. You know, how it's the most cliched way of thinking about why people go to a fashion institute, because it's all glamour and they're pretty girls. One, yes, that was not even of my interest. I mean, girls. And yes, there is glamour in a fashion industry, but then there's so much of hard work as well. So at NIFT, like I mentioned, it wasn't about studying, but it was more about having fun. Every time they gave an assignment, I would be the first. I was just like one Enthu cutlet who was always trying to finish things much before my other classmates, and everybody would like give me those dirty looks saying that, stop, don't show it today. I'm like, okay, I'll wait for you all. But then it was fun. I eventually got the gold medal. And that particular year, I was very fortunate that I received it from the president then, Mr. Abdul Kalam. So, and I think at that point, my dad was very clear about what his son wanted to do in life. After that, there was no questioning. He just said, okay. I remember the day I got my Best Student Award, I just walked through the crowd and I said, this is for you. And I'm sure there was a certain amount of pride, which I'm assuming, or I want to believe that he was happy about it. After NIFT, I did work in Hyderabad for a couple of years in retail and also in Bangalore. When I was invited by NIFT again, I think all the institute where I studied, they were very fond of me. They always call me back to teach. So I came back to NIFT to teach as a guest faculty, teaching my favorite subject, print design. And that's when I was actually with my students, is when, you know, that little urge of, you know, I think I want to study a little more. At that point, you had time on your side. When I say time, age. So I eventually did my second master's. I did my MA fashion in Italy, Milan. I was 29 then when I went to Milan. And I think Milan changed me as a person, totally. I had to talk about all this journey from dentistry to going to NIFT, Hyderabad, and then, of course, to Italy, Milan, Europe, because I think it's very, very important for all of us to travel alone, to discover yourself. When you're in a foreign land by yourself, that is when you actually realize what you are. I'm not saying that you can't do that living in your country, but then I think, what does meditation do to you, right? The same thing happens when you travel. And I was a very, very short-tempered person when I was here back then in college. I was like, probably also I was carrying too much of a baggage from a certain time, that for me it was also about running away from a lot of things from my past. So I think reaching Milan and starting life fresh from then, because it was a new surrounding for me, starting fresh, new people around. So it was about a lot of chapters which you left behind in your life, hidden. You want to just dig them and, you know, don't show them to anybody. I remember this one time when my friend in Milan asked me, Ganesh, do you ever get angry? I just love when she asked me that, because I remember back in NIFT, everybody was so scared to come and even talk to me because I was so short-tempered. But when I went to Milan, that whole change, I knew that, yes, I'm liking this phase of mine where you're accepting everything the way everything is, and you have the patience, you are accepting. I think it was around the same time when I actually accepted myself also, when today I say that I am gay. After coming back from Milan, why did I come back from Milan? Though I knew that I would have probably lived. When I say live, I literally mean I could breathe easily without thinking or caring about what one would think of me or what anybody would judge, if what I wear or what I speak or whom I'm looking at. So, but then I think at that point in my life, my priorities were very different. There's a lot of ambition, when you finish college, there's that zeal to do something nice about your life. So when I came back from Milan, it was about starting my own studio. There was so much of energy in terms of what's next, how do I go about? Because also coming from a non-business family, my mom's an art teacher, my dad's a marketing person, and nobody was into business. So for me, it was a totally new thing. So again, after coming back, I went and I spent a month in Oroville, and just to try and figure out as to what do I do now, like how do I go about in planning my studio. I come back, and it was on the 1st of September 2007 that I started my studio with just a couple of machines. Tried and contacted my really old tailors and embroidery karigars. I said, I'm starting this, will you come work for me? And everybody was there. I think they kind of followed where I was going, and then that one phone call, and I said, will you come work for me? And everybody was there. I felt like I must have done something good, that today everybody wants to come and be with you. And that's how the journey of my label, Ganesh Nallari, began. It started with designing clothes for family, friends, and I've never really publicized my work, like what you see in magazines and all. It was purely word of mouth, and even till date, as I complete my 10 years in a couple of days from now, I have never publicized my work. It has purely been word of mouth, and I truly believe that is the best way to reach out. Today, after a lot of social media platforms or other things which are available, I think it is an easier way to connect with your client, anybody for that matter. But nothing like a one-on-one when you hear like, oh, this person is wearing something nice, and you hear it is done by so-and-so person. Why I'm mentioning you about my clothing here is because when I function very different at my studio. It is not about a retail outlet where you just go and pick something which is on the shelf. For me, it is about people. For me, it is about dressing you, but not forcing myself on you. When I say that, you will find a lot of designer pieces in the market. But for me, yes, I will give you a designer piece, but for me, you are important more than me. Your personality has to reflect in what you wear. I come secondary there. And that's what I truly believe, because every individual is different, and that should shine first. Otherwise, everybody will start looking like a copy of each other. I also say this at this point, that when we talk about every individual being different, yes, there's black, gray, and white. There is also gray, which we always tend to forget. So there's a man, there's a woman, and there's somebody in between who has a certain preference, right? So I did not come out to the world then when I started my studio. Being very professional at work, you have so many people you're meeting on a daily basis. Fashion, yes, there's so many women you interact with every day. And it was one of my clients who had invited me for her birthday. I was very adamant because I usually prefer keeping it separate. I don't like to, I am a private person to a large extent until I let somebody in my life. And there was this one time when she was a very regular client and she said, you have to come for my birthday. And I said, okay. And things kind of changed from there because there was this party. And of course, we were all having a great time and I love to dance, which most Hyderabad men don't, sadly. And I was having a great time dancing and there were 3 women in front of me and 3 women behind me. We were doing this weird, I don't know what, but we were having a great time. And there was so much of comfort around. At that point, I think one of the husbands did not like it. And so another guy from the party came and he just whispered in my ear saying, dude, what are you doing? I said, what am I doing? I'm like having a great time. And then he just pulled me to the side and he said, the way you're dancing with these other ladies. I said, yeah, they're all my friends, so what's wrong? He said, do you realize they're all married women? I said, so? Like I'm having a good time with my friends. And they invited me here. I have a certain comfort with them and I'm having a great time. At that point, I think I just told that guy, you know what, relax, I'm gay. And that was it. I didn't even have to try coming out to anybody or do anything. He did the job for me. I was like, thank you. I think it made my life so much more easier. So he took care of my PR in terms of you do my job of you coming out for me. So, well, that's about it. When it came to society, I mean, when I say society in terms of the people around you, your client or everybody, this is how I came out to the world. But I think my biggest concern was when I was coming out to my parents. I still do not know if I have come out to them or not. But considering I'm at an age where I should have been married and all my friends almost have kids who are in high school now. And it was only once that my mom asked me that I should consider marriage. I didn't even have to say a word, I just looked at her. I used all my dance expressions. And I just looked at her and I said, that's it. And that was the first and the last time she actually asked me about marriage. So I live by myself in Hyderabad. My parents also live in Hyderabad, in Secunderabad. I visit them every Sunday for lunch. I'm mentioning this again because every Sunday when I go home, there's always been that urge of, you know what, today I think I'm going to tell them. Just finish it. You know, I don't want to keep them under any hope of that, you know, that he will get married at some point or whatever. I think I always felt like it's good to sit and talk and finish it. But then every Sunday I would go thinking that, okay, today I'm going to tell them. But I don't know, then I would postpone it for the next week, thinking that, I mean, yeah, I had a good time. Why again disturb this whole peace at home? I came, I had my lunch, I had a nice nap, they gave me tea, I had tea, I played with my dog. So let it just be, I'll postpone it to the next Sunday. So it was around the same time that I actually started doing theatre. And in Hyderabad, there's a theatre group which organizes short play competitions. And I had also worked with the theatre group previously. And this friend of mine, he said, Ganesh, you should take part in this competition. And he was the one who pushed me. So when I decided to write a story, I said, why not write about my own self? So that's when I wrote my first play. I also directed in it. Of course, I had to act in it. So I thought, let me write about me and my mom. And I used stage as a platform to tell my story to the world, more to my parents. So I just changed a little about the designer being a dancer. how he becomes this famous dancer. And the story is about two dancers, the mother and the son, and how the mother faces a lot of challenges in her life, how she gives up her passion for dance, but she secretly teaches the son dance. And but when it actually comes to when the mother questions the son about marriage, he doesn't have words because he's so frightened, he's terrified, he's just not able to tell it to her. So at that point, he dances and he tells his mom about who he is. So when I wrote the script and I was discussing it with my co-actor, the lady who played my mother's role, and also with my friend who was doing the lighting for me, I remember he mentioning that किसको समझ में आएगा dance, तुम ये सब करके दिखाओगे तो किसको समझ में, who will understand what you're doing? I said, if nobody understands what I did, that means I failed as a dancer, I failed as a writer, as an actor, I failed in communicating forget about anything, but telling what I had to tell my parents. I said, no, I am going to do the same thing in the climax, and that is going to be the ending. And so we qualified in the prelims and we reached the finals, and the big day. And I remember the last scene happening. There was pin drop silence. It's a very emotional, very heavy scene, the last scene. And I could see me and my co-actor. Of course, me getting emotional is understood because I'm telling my story. But then I remember the girl who played my mom. I could hear her cry because it's so quiet, and I could hear her cry that, it echoed in the auditorium. And the lights were off, and we both were still hugging and crying. And literally somebody had to come and say, time up, please go. You're like, oh, okay. And of course, we won Mudra. Mudra won the competition. We were second because it was a very unconventional story. I was glad that we won, not just because it was important about winning the competition, but about the audience accepting us. When I say us, I mean the LGBT community. At that point, I realized it was not about me just talking about my life, but then there must have been so many people in the audience who related to it, who were there to accept me and people like me there. So when I finished the play after getting the trophy, and I just walked down, and I was still unsure about whether my parents understood or no. So this girl who came and who was congratulating me, what a powerful scene, Ganesh, the last one. I said, thank you. And somebody tapped me from the back, and she was telling to this girl who was standing in front of me, saying that, but that is all true. And I just turned back, and it was my mom. I was like, okay, she got the message. So that's how I came out to my parents. It was very interesting, but it has always been that way, that be it coming out as who I am, or in every situation, I've always used some way or the other of art being centric towards my life. It was around the same time, in 2009, that it just happened that one of my family members also passed away, and it also happens that this person was the one who abused me all my life. All my life, in the sense, my whole childhood. So I wasn't talking to him for very, very long. Yeah, it was a guy. I wasn't talking to him for very long, and everybody knew in the family that I really didn't get along very well with him. So when he passed away that day, I think I was the one who cried the most, because I did not know if I have to mourn the death of a family member or celebrate a chapter which was over in my life. So I just I came back home and I was chatting with a friend of mine who happens to be a filmmaker, and I told him that this is what happened, and I just came back from the funeral, And he said, Ganesh, will you write the story for me? I said, no. I will share important parts of my life with you, but I don't want to dig back and talk about anything, what had happened. And eventually the film was made. The film is called I Am. They're 4 short stories directed by Honor. And I Am Abhimanyu is based on mine and another friend, Harish Iyer from Bombay. So it's an inspiration, but it's not a biography. There are parts of the scenes where he's picked from my life and Harish's life, and the movie is made. I Am eventually won the national award in 2012. And I am again talking about my abuse here because for a long time, I think I was blaming my abuse for my sexuality. Because it's an age when you have your crushes. You see your friends around who go on Valentine's Day with a rose. And here, you're sitting in one corner, trying to figure out what's happening around, dealing with your own abuse. With your sexuality. I just pretended that even I was straight. I would just randomly buy a rose and go give a girl whom I didn't even bother about, just to make a point that, oh, he did it, so even I should be doing it. Today when I think back of all the silly things which I did and trying to be somebody else just because my other friends, other guys in the class were doing. But then there was such a pure relationship with all the friends I had, like be it a guy or a girl, there is intimacy. When you talk about intimacy, you also have to realize that there are 2 different kinds of intimacy. There's a physical intimacy, and then there's also an emotional connect you have with the individual. But all my emotional connects have been only with women. Yes, because I also say only with women, because today I worry that if I have, or with whoever I have, an emotional connect with a guy, the world looks at that other boy also thinking that he is gay. That has become my biggest challenge today, to have good guy friends. You go to a party, everybody's clicking pictures, you have 3 women and you take a picture, everybody's fine with that. One post with that boy on Facebook or anywhere on social media, next question inbox, oh, are you dating him? I'm like, give me a break. He's a straight guy. You make that other person conscious about not taking a picture with you. So, what I'm trying to tell you here is, it hasn't been tough because you also dealing with abuse and you're also dealing with discovering your own self. The last time I actually was felt by somebody was when the last time the abuse happened. But for the longest time, I almost lived like an asexual, because for me it was something bad. It was something which I did not want in my life, because you are looked at, your body is looked at as an object. So I really had trust issues. I found that comfort around women, but I would never go close to a boy. Also, I think you come from a time when people did not even know what a gay or a lesbian is. I'm talking about the previous generation, not now, like how openly we talk about it. So even I did not know what was going on, honestly. We have so many apps and it's so much more easier to connect to the community today, but I'm talking about a time like a few years back, I'm not very old, it's just a couple of years back. that even to find somebody to just talk about how you feel was so difficult. And so I think over a period of time, I'd worked on myself in many ways. Like I said, I mentioned about dentistry to design, this whole journey to where I am today, and to reach a state of mind where you accept yourself for what it is without worrying about who's judging you. So what is most important is I'm not going to question any of you all here whether you have come out of the closet. Do we need a heterosexual to come out of the closet to prove that he is heterosexual and say that he likes women? So at that point, I feel everybody's sexual preference is their personal business. I will come out to people whom I think are important to me. I do not even care about what the third, fourth person is going to think about me. So coming out is never about coming out for the society. Coming out is always for you. Because if you feel it is important that you come out and you feel lighter, you will realize that how long can you live in a denial, you know? There might be a lot of cases where people are married and living a dual life, cheating on partners, but they still know that there is something, that they are doing something wrong because they haven't totally come face to face with reality with themselves. Again, like I said, I do not want to judge who's done that because I think whoever is living a particular life is living a particular life. Only they know what they are going through in their life. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm talking in specific about marriage because I think some people still expect, my relatives expect that I should get married. Even when I'm so openly gay, some people ask questions like I remember this last time when I usually don't go to family gatherings only to avoid this. And as soon as I went, one of my aunt asked me, so, Ganesh, when are you getting married? She just said it so loud. I was so embarrassed. I was about to just tell it to her saying, oh, just find me a cute boy and I'm ready. I wish there was an arranged marriage even for the LGBT community. You know, it would just make life so much more easier. And I just looked at my mom and I said, this is the reason why I don't want to come to such places. And she's like, okay, calm down. So coming out is always for yourself. And life always gives us many chances. It's only for us to look forward for new beginnings. And I think what you do is everything is in your hands. You create your opportunities. I truly believe that you have to create your opportunities. You create your moments, your situations. There's confusion, it's all right. I think confusion gives you choices. But you can design your life. People can help you or support you, but it's all up to you what you want to do. So whether you want to come out and face and live an honest life, or suffer within, is totally your call. But what is most important is just being honest to yourself. Yeah. Thank you.